some thoughts on repetition. Our next contestant is Castor. The title is Some Thought on Repetition. Please welcome our second contestant.
Hey everyone, my name is Castor. It's wonderful to be here. The first thing you should know about me is that I'm an incredibly lazy person. Anytime I'm given a task, the first question I ask myself is, how do I get this done while doing as little work as humanly possible? The speech competition's theme was the icebreaker, so I was really extraordinarily tempted to get up here and give exactly the same speech I gave a few weeks ago. I already had it written and memorized, so it would have been simple, it would have been easy, and for me it would have been at least a little bit boring. Brings us to the second thing that you should know about me, which is that I'm not actually terribly lazy. I'll always think about doing as little as I can, but I hardly ever go through with it. I'll usually do at least a little bit more than I absolutely need to. So I've been speaking for a minute and a half, and I've told you that I'm lazy and that I'm not lazy, and it sure sounds like I've just contradicted myself and said nothing at all worth hearing, which takes us to the third thing you should know about me, which is that I believe in the complexity of things. I think the truth is always a little bit more complicated than we like to imagine it to be. It doesn't divide itself up easily into nice, well-defined, digestible chunks of true and false and reasonable and unreasonable. Consider, for example, the theme of today's contest. It's almost idiomatic that you don't get a second chance at a first impression. That's explicitly what we're doing here today. We are taking this time to introduce ourselves again to our peers. If you want to consider more generally the question of repeating any event, let's say a speech, if the two speeches aren't the same in some way, if they aren't alike, you can't call it a repetition. You're giving two speeches, you're not giving one speech twice. But anytime you go ahead and try to give one speech twice, there's going to be differences. The audience will be different, the situation, the place, you will breathe in slightly different, at different moments. You're not in control of all the details to that extent. So given that you are inevitably going to have some differences, what degree of difference is acceptable when you want to say that you're giving the same speech twice? How much variation is allowed within a repeating set? Or if you want to turn the question around, is it ever possible to give the same speech twice? This is really just a restatement of what's called the Heraclitean paradox, and my favorite formulation of it, roughly translated from the ancient Greek, goes, "No man steps in the same river twice, for both man and river will have changed." That sounds familiar to you? You've either read a philosophy textbook or seen the Disney movie Pocahontas. They stole that line for a song. But as far as speeches go, it's actually an interesting question. If things are going to be the same and different anytime you give another speech, or give the same speech again, I suppose, what do you choose to preserve? What's worth keeping the same? What's important? It's a tough question, and I don't think it has an easy answer. If you think it does, I sure want to hear your thoughts after the meeting, because that's actually the fourth thing you should know about me. Anytime I find a particular question interesting, I like to toss it out to people and see what they do with it. See if they think it's boring, agree with me that it's interesting, have some sort of answer to convince me of. And I find that really fun. But I think just tossing a question out in a talk and, soliciting answers drifts back into the realm of laziness. So I'm going to go ahead and try to answer it for you guys, or at least give you my answer. That'll take us right into the fifth thing you should know about me, which is that I always look for insight in etymology. It's the study of the history, meanings, and origins of words. And I find that it has a lot of useful things to show us about everything, or anything we have a word for anyway. Let's take a look at the word paradox. It comes from the Greek paradoxa, has two parts. Para, which means next to, beside, turned away from, or even lesser or twisted, and doxa, which means opinion. So the original Greek word paradoxa just means contrary to received opinion or expectation. Now this for me is wonderful, because here we are discussing things that are about truth and reason and logic, things we want to give all the gravity of fact to. But the word we're using to describe the issue we run into, paradox, explicitly puts the whole debate into the realm of opinion. And I think that's the way any true paradox really is. It may seem that we're dealing with something that has to be hard and fast in one direction or another, but ultimately, you can't resolve it without making some kind of decision, coming to some conclusion of your own volition. And that gave me, I think, the confidence to sort of take license and try to give the same speech without giving the same speech, to preserve what I felt was worth preserving, and, I don't know, let the rest change as it would. I don't know that it was necessarily the best choice, but it was certainly the one I had the most fun with, and I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Again, may we have 1 minute of silence where the judges mark their ballot. Thank you. Before I introduce our third contestant, again, this third speech, the test speech for the 3 contestants for the evaluation contest. And then I also want